hope you're enjoying my dad's videos. Make sure to share this video with family and friends, like and subscribe, and turn on post notifications so you get notified for all my dad's new videos. My social media will be tagged down below so you can follow it. And just remember, Jesus loves you.
Hi guys, just to let you know, we've got a brand new website, drcharlieward.com, where all our videos will be loaded over the next few weeks, and you'll be able to view all of those there's no charge for watching any of those. We've moved them all onto our own platform because all the doctor ones, which are very, very important, have been taken down, so we've now got control over those, but every single video we post will be free to watch. That's very important for you to know. The other thing is we're getting an awful lot of people asking us about gold and silver. And I've always been an advocate of gold and silver. And myself, I'm not in a position to give financial advice. I'm not qualified to do so. I'm just going to tell you what I've personally done. I've personally bought gold and silver, and I've used a company that I trust, which is shown below here. They've always looked after me well. And if you order from them more than £250 worth, you get a free 1 ounce silver coin, which is very, very nice. It's a nice little gift. But this is not an endorsement. This is just what I have done personally, and it's up to you. It's your choice. As I said, I'm not qualified to give the advice or financial advice, but it's just what I have done personally. And I hope you enjoy it. And I hope you enjoy watching all of my videos. Thank you. I love it down here. It's the fact we get 300 days a year of sunshine. So when it does actually rain, it's actually quite nice. Makes everything green again. But it doesn't rain that often, apart from when they're doing their chemtrails, which we've had a bit of this year and for the last couple.
Oh right. There's been very few of those in the UK this year. I'm not really noticing those anymore.
No, it's always dangerous, I think, when you try and play God. And the first time I ever became aware of it is when it happened in China for the Olympics, where you'd say on the face of it was a good idea to clear the air, because I've been to Beijing, and Beijing is a city when the air gets dirty, it's really dirty.
Yeah.
No, it's
you must miss traveling, because you used to do a lot of traveling, and so did I. That's one of the hardest things for me to bear this year, just not being able to move about freely.
Yeah, I miss traveling. One of the benefits of traveling that I love more than traveling itself is meeting people from other countries and like going into Africa. I'll give you one example. When I fly into Burkina Faso, Ouagadougou is the capital. It's a part of the world that most people in the world have never even heard of. And the people are so warm and so kind, and yet they're so under pressure from having everything stolen from them. But they're such beautiful people. And you go into Niger, and you go into Ghana. I go into Accra in Ghana a lot. I go into Kenya. I go into Nigeria. I was so relieved to see the peace agreement. That's being the peace agreements in that part of the world that are coming together, because there's some beautiful countries in the Middle East and Africa that people haven't seen. I remember the first time I went into Iraq and Iran. I have a special passport of which I can go into Iran, but they're absolutely beautiful people, and it's a beautiful place. Tehran's a beautiful place, and we just, because of what's gone on in our history, we're unable to go there. And I must admit, I have a soft spot for the Persian women. I think they look stunning. I mean, that's just a personal thing. They're beautiful women.
Yeah. You've got stories, brother. You could write a book one day. You probably should.
It's coming out in December. It's being written as we speak.
Well, okay. That'd be a fascinating read. I mean, I've had some interesting experiences as well, because I've traveled as a DJ, and I've DJed in Africa.
Yeah.
In South Africa many times, but I've also been to Botswana and Mozambique.
Yeah.
And they're very much off the beaten track.
Yeah.
And I had very interesting experiences there. Love the people, as you say. Most people don't get any kind of access to those cultures.
Yeah.
And a lot of these places are demonized by the mainstream press, such as Iraq, such as you mentioned, You know, a lot of people would not want to go there because of what they've heard about it in the media. But when you get inside these places, it's an amazing experience. And I'm so grateful for all the ones I've had.
It's interesting. I was unaware that you used to be, or you are still a DJ, because
well, not anymore, because there's nowhere to DJ anymore.
A lot of my followers said to me, you need to get Mark Devlin on, you need to get him on. I've had that for 6 months. So you're obviously highly respected amongst the truth community, which is a huge honor.
Yeah, it seems that way.
And that's a good thing. But I remember I could never understand how somebody would pay £500,000 for a DJ, such as Carl Cox was the one at the time when I was sort of understanding music. And I had the privilege of bumping into a guy called Dave Morales.
Oh, yeah.
Who comes from Malaga. And then his mother has a house there. And when we went to the house, I realized the value of a really good DJ, because it wasn't a love of music, it was an obsession of music. And he converted a spare room into a library of vinyl, and he went through it with such passion and such love, and where he could tell you where he'd bought it and everything else. And that passion, then when I went and saw DJs who could DJ, you could see them express themselves, because not only did they love the sound of the music, they loved the history of the music and every part of it. And that was a fascinating part for me.
That's right. If I turn my camera around here, you can probably see my turntables.
Yeah.
Wow. I've got some vinyl down here.
Good man.
Just a small amount of the vinyl collection. So I'm still getting that all sorted. Yeah, I miss those days because there's nowhere to DJ anymore. You know, there's a war on joy. There's a war on culture.
Yeah.
And a big part of this communist agenda we've got coming in is shutting down nightclubs, shutting down music venues. Maybe we could talk about that, you know, because they're just trying to remove that artistic, creative spark within humanity, and they're just trying to remove enjoyment.
Well, you made a valid point there, because I have this argument which I've had with the headmaster at Justin's school, where a teacher that wears a mask when they're teaching, if a child, which children tend to do, misbehave, the only way of getting their attention now when their face is covered is by raising their voice. And I disagree with that in principle. A teacher can look at you in a certain way that you go, I need to behave. But if you covered that up, the only way to get their attention is to raise their voice. And you're absolutely right. Taking away people's joy. You know, in Spain, when you meet somebody, you kiss them on the cheek 2 times, 3 times, 3 times if they're from Holland, Spain 2 times. That's stopped. Embracing people stopped. You've got to keep your distance. I had a woman yesterday that I filled up the car with petrol and went to pay for it. And when I walked in, she said, "You're not wearing a mask." I said, "No, I have a certificate." "Oh dear, I've got to go into quarantine now because you refuse to wear a mask." And I went, "Really? Are you that stupid?"
Yeah, you don't have to do it.
No, exactly.
You can make that personal choice yourself. You don't want to do it, so don't do it. Exactly. Who are you harming? Who's going to know? I like to think all this is going to be coming back, and I think it will, because it's just natural ways of human expression, not covering up your face with a bit of bloody cloth, you know, being able to read someone's facial expressions. It's just a part of what it is to be human. Yeah. And it's inherent to us, and it's got to come back. These are artificial, unnatural ways of living, and they might be with us for a temporary period, but we're not going to live like this ad infinitum. You know, sanity is going to have to prevail at some point.
It is. When I first heard about this 6 years ago, about shutting down the world's economy for a financial reset, I thought nothing of it. I didn't even know there was 2 sides, a good side and a bad side. And then 2 years ago, the same. It was only in December last year, November, December, that I was told they were going to do it this year, that we're going to shut down the world's economy for a global financial reset, that I started to investigate. And the minute I started investigating, and the virus came along, I started asking more questions. And the people that I have contact with were saying, we're using this purely as a smokescreen, but we're up against evil. And that was the first time I'd heard about the good and the evil. That was the first time I realized it was not between Trump and Biden. This was between God and Satan. And one thing that's very, very sure, there are satanic discos without a shadow of a doubt, but most of the music places are, they're joyous. That's what God would want. Music and dance. It's biblical. There are people who will try and steal that. It's like today, Friday the 13th. It's actually a really good day, Friday the 13th. And the Satanists stole it in 1478, I think it was, and tried to make it satanic. But if you take the 13 cycles of the sun and the moon in a year, women have 13 periodical cycles in a year. It's a feminine thing of cleansing and purity and what have you. And the evil try and steal it. But you and I both know, I've been to many, many raves and concerts and parties. I had 15 years at parties every night of my life. And the uplifting feeling of music, dance, communication, touchy-feely, whatever, is a very positive thing.
Well, that's right. I went into that in my book, Musical Truth Volume 2, where I was taking a deep dive into the acid house rave scene that came out of the UK in the late 80s going into the 90s, and then the birth of the super club era and this whole clubbing revolution. And I've exposed some of the nefarious, dark kind of symbolism that went into those scenes, and I've studied some of the more sinister elements of it. But I made the observation that at the core root of everything, there is this natural inherent desire within humanity to express ourselves through dancing and through music and through rhythm. It's built into us. And the controllers that have subverted and steered off these different expressions of the music industry have understood this, because they are dark occultists. They're very well versed and well studied in these areas. But the reason why the clubbing revolution of the 90s was so successful all over the world, pretty much every country you could name had a very thriving, very healthy nightclub scene, is because it was tapping into that inherent natural part of us. And it's been that way since the dawn of humanity. So there was a very interesting documentary on BBC4 a couple of years ago. It was the history of club culture and dance, and they wheeled out Moby, the American techno DJ and producer, and he made a very potent comment. I mean, I don't trust Moby because he's from one of these historic bloodlines, and you can trace him back through Masonic families and such. But he is in a position to know what he's talking about. And he said, if we were sitting here 10,000 years ago, somebody might be inclined to ask, what do you think is compelling those people to dance around a fire while somebody is bashing out a rhythm on some logs, while the embers of the fire flicker in their eyes and they express themselves in this ritualistic fashion? And he said, you've just described the way humanity was living 10,000 years ago and a nightclub rave scene from last night, because all the elements are still there. It's just the fine detail that's been changed. So the music industry has been a very effective method through which the controllers have affected the psyche of the masses. And they've gone after young people through this aspect of culture, because young people's minds and souls and hearts are very malleable, because they don't have the life experience that the likes of you and I have, Charlie. They're not cynical and jaded and world weary as we are. So that's why it's been so successful. But it's very interesting to me now to see that they seem to have trashed the club culture scene. They seem to have trashed the music industry generally this year. They seem to view it as expendable. They don't really need it anymore. And I really feel for young people now, because they don't have clubs and festivals and raves that they can go out to. It's been a hell of a year for young people to have to bear. At least the likes of us had the opportunity for those experiences in our formative years. So it's very tragic to see what's being done there.
It is. And when you were talking there, I was thinking, because I've been very public about the fact that before I met my wife 10 years ago, I was out 7 nights a week. And I was using...
Maybe I DJ'd to you somewhere.
Sorry?
Maybe I DJ'd to you somewhere.
You probably did. But I was nearly always in Marbella. And so if you DJ'd in Olivia Valaire's or anything like that, then I would have definitely been there, or any of the other clubs here, or Dreamers, which is another one that's down here. But I look back at that, and somebody made a comment yesterday that when we get through this period of darkness into light, we'll be rid of cocaine and heroin. And I thought to myself then, when I used to go clubbing, I was dependent on cocaine. And I've been away from that now for a long time. And for me, I've looked at the damage it's done to people, and you can actually have a really good time without alcohol or drugs if you just embrace music, because music can set you free anyway.
That's right. Yeah, and you get that in the lyrics to a lot of house music records, where they kind of evangelize about the power of the music, the rhythm, the beat, and it's almost a religious experience where you can get high off the music. There's that notion there, and certainly that can be the case. It's all to do with frequency and vibration, and of course you get some music where you've got a malevolent producer that's working for the control system, and they're stripping all kinds of frequencies and all kinds of hidden aspects into the music. Particularly now it's all digitally and electronically produced. You can put all kinds of stuff in there on a hidden level that the subconscious mind will pick up on, but the conscious mind will never be aware of. But the opposite is also true. So if you've got someone with benevolent, uplifting intent that knows what they're doing, music can be very powerful and very uplifting in that regard. You're very correct in what you mentioned earlier about this being a battle of good versus evil, because that is literally what it's come down to now. And as you say, it's not about Trump versus Biden, Democrats versus Republicans, or any of these other dialectics. It's literally good versus evil. There are only two sides to be on. This was brought home to me this week, where I've been studying a lot the fine detail of what's been going on this year in terms of the 3D excuse me, the 3D reality of it, dates, places, times, methods, tactics, detail like that. But I had a different kind of slant put on it this week when I had a discussion with a spiritual medium. And this is a guy that I've known for some years. He hosted a talk that I did a couple of years ago at a venue. And I have discussions with him every now and again. And he said he wanted to speak to me about some visions and some insights and some downloads, if you like, that he's been channeling about what's going on in these times. And he was telling me stuff that I've heard many other commentators talk about. JCK out of Australia has talked about this. Laurie Ladd, that you've had on your show. And this guy was kind of reiterating what these ladies have been saying, which is that we are undergoing this paradigm shift. We are heading towards a major elevation of human consciousness. And like I say, it's something I've been aware of for some time, but it really kind of resonated with me, and all the pieces fitted together in this conversation I had this week. And there's a couple of memes and phrases that you get out of the Q movement, which really apply to this. And one of them is, nothing can stop what is coming. Mm-hmm. So it is inevitable that this is on the way. Mm-hmm. And then the other one is, where we go one, we go all. Mm-hmm. And the idea is that when this shift in human consciousness takes place, everyone's coming along for the ride. Mm-hmm. No one's getting left behind. We all go there. Mm-hmm. And this person was saying, this is why we're getting so much dumped on us by the control system now, all at once. They're throwing everything they've got at us because they know damn well that this is coming. They've been able to foresee this in the timeline. I don't know whether this is looking glass technology or mm-hmm. whether they've been consulting remote viewers or psychics themselves, but they can see what's coming, that we're all headed to a much better place. And so they're desperately trying to suppress that by dumping all this negativity and all this fear and all this trauma on us. And that's what we're experiencing right now. And his perspective on things really resonated with me this week. And it's kind of given me a bit of an uplift, because I get a lot of dark, devastating, doom, gloom material dumped on me. Most days when I go to my inbox in the morning, 95% of it will be doom, dread, horror, and fear. And somehow people seem to think, oh, here's a dreadful, horrific story about where we're all headed and our dystopian future and how our children's lives are all shagged. Mark would like to see this. I'll send it to Mark. Everyone seems to think that I would love to look at these stories. And that's all I get in my inbox. And it does cause me to get very down and very depressed some days. But this week, I've been looking at things from this different perspective on a spiritual, metaphysical level. And it's really given me a lift.
I'm so glad you said that, because I think the world of JCK and I think the world of Laurie Ladd, and I've spoken to them both. And the one thing that I've learned, that I get information from physical people within the walls of power, but it very often is encrypted and encoded. They say things, they don't say everything. And what I've learned,
what more can you tell us about these groups that you're getting your intel from, Charlie? I mean, can you reveal some more about what they represent?
These are people that are either diplomats or ambassadors that I've worked with. That when I move money around the world, in the old days, I've been very open about this. In the old days, I used to be on a private jet with loads of naughty girls and cocaine and champagne, and that was lots and lots of fun. But nowadays, now I've been settled down for 10 years with my wife, those days are over. So I tend to land up with a number of bodyguards and either an ambassador or a diplomat or something. And it's not something like, it's not like a question and answer thing. We just sat there. I don't know if you've ever been on a private jet, but they're pretty boring. You sat on there. Sorry?
I never have, no, sadly.
They're pretty boring. You're better off traveling in business or first class with any airline than a private jet, because it's fairly lonely, especially for 6 or 7 hours or 10 hours or whatever. And there's only 3 or 4 of you on there. And normally they've gone down the corner supermarket and bought some sandwiches and tins of Coke and what have you, especially when you're working in Africa and places like that, when you're bringing from Africa into the Middle East. So you land on there and you're just talking and you don't really think much about the conversation. It's just chit chat between two guys. It's only times like this you realize the value of what they said about what was going on. And I've been looking back at numbers of things that they've said. And then I've gone to the spiritual people that I know around me and shared that information to try and get clarity on what that means. And I think this is very important right now, that we connect with our spiritual side. And I've said it a lot of times. If you believe in God, ask him. If you believe in Allah, ask him. If you don't believe in anyone, ask your mum or your grandma. But try and get your moral compass accurate so that when you take information in, you understand the truth of it. And then when you share it with somebody that's spiritual, they can give you accurate guidance. And I've learned so much from the spiritual side on this journey, because what they do is they give clarity to some muddy waters. Some of the information you get is not quite clear. And when you put it to them the way it's put to you, and then they come back, well, it's this, and they'll be connecting themselves, they'll be channeling, they'll be finding out what's going on. And I haven't just got one of them, I've got probably half a dozen that I can bounce these things off. The nice thing is, Mark, they all seem to come back with the same information. But I'm going to make one very interesting point here that I've had to deal with in the last 2 weeks. And it makes me a little bit not angry or upset. It concerns me that we're going into a phase now where my truth is better than your truth. And I'm like, come on. I relate it to when I was given a puzzle of Sydney Harbour when I was a kid. And the bridge and the opera house are easy, but the water and the sky are monotonous. But every single point, every single piece of that puzzle is valuable and is necessary. There's not one piece that's more valuable, because if you miss a piece of the sky out, even though the opera house looks beautiful, the picture's not complete.
Yeah, there's a lot of what I refer to as real world truthers out there. And these are people, again, that look at the 3D perspective on things. So they're all about documents and detail and names and dates. And a lot of these people contact me and they fill my inbox with all this doom and dread that I mentioned. And if they're not looking at things from a spiritual and metaphysical perspective as well, and if they don't realize that there's more to what's going on here than our 5 sense 3D reality, then they're missing the major part of the picture. And as you say, a lot of these real world truthers seem to want to outdo each other by being the one that tells you how dark and dreadful your future is going to be. Mm-hmm. So they'll make a whole video about it, and you watch the video and you just have this brick in the pit of your stomach, and it gets you right there in your lower chakras, and you feel that fear, and you feel hopeless, and you feel depressed for the rest of the day. And then somebody else will pop up and tell you how, no, it's even worse than that. You haven't seen this document. This is what they want to do to us. Yeah. And like I say, when you fill your day just looking at all that information, it's going to put you in a very dark and hopeless place. Yeah. So you have to realize that there are higher perspectives to what's going on here. And once you embrace that, it gives you a very different perspective on things. And when it comes to this whole Q Trump situation, I've been very open about it in my videos that I do through the weeks, and you could look back over my archive for the past several months and you'll see that I flounder and I flip-flop all over the place when it comes to this. So I desperately want the official Q narrative to be a valid thing. Mm-hmm. I desperately want Trump to turn out to be a goodly, godly guy that is working for the benefit of humanity. And I do see some indication that that is the case. But there are a lot of red flags and alarm bells ringing for me when it comes to various aspects of him and what he's doing. Mm-hmm. And I would like to say that all these months into this, I'm now in a very clear and focused place in terms of what I understand to be going on. But I can't say that because I'm still as confused as ever. And this situation with the election last week, I mean, listening to various pundits, I had been of the view that on the 3rd of November, Trump was going to sweep the board, the red wave, the undisputed electoral victory. And on the 4th of November, he could roll up his sleeves, get down to business and start to clean house. And it didn't work out that way. We've got this debacle, this pantomime now. We don't know how long it's going to go on until these counts are all done and it goes to the Supreme Court. And I do feel that there's not a chance in hell that Biden is ever going to be US president. It's pretty inevitable to me that Trump is going to get his second term. But I don't know how long it's going to take till that happens. And all the while that we're waiting, and all the while that there's all this confusion and chaos, the deep state cabal, the controllers, are still putting all their fear and their trauma and their tyrannical control on us. The slavery continues. The exploitation of people continues. There's going to be more suicides from people that just can't take the desolation of these lockdowns. There's going to be more mental health issues from people that just crack up under the pressure of it all. So it's very frustrating for me to see this thing being dragged out and just having become a real shit show that's encompassed the whole year. I don't know if you can shed any perspectives on that, but from my point of view, and I think many people feel the same way that I do, because I get correspondence from people daily, and they tell me that one of the things they appreciate about my videos, that they find the most value in, is the fact that I'm honest and I'm open about the fact that I'm confused. Everything seems a mess to me. I flip-flop and I flounder and I go from one extreme to the other. People seem to like the fact that I expressed that because I'm speaking for them. But I could sure use some fine-tuned perspective on what's really going on here.
Yeah, no, I appreciate what you said there exactly, because I know there's an awful lot of people that have exactly the same emotion as you call it, flip-flopping. I haven't flip-flopped from the minute I started because of the fact that I believe the people I'm talking to, because I've worked with them for years. And everything they've told me so far has come true. And this is why I talk about conspiracy theories and truth. Truth is there's a very simple way to work out what truth is. Truth is everything that's happened up until now and everything that's happening today, right now. That's where truth ends. Tomorrow is all speculation, what have you. But once you establish the foundations of truth, so these people have told me what's going to happen, and so far it's happened. Not with the exact timeline, because I'm just Charlie. I'm not the Messiah. I'm just somebody that they trust with certain information. With regard to the process of the election, it was made very clear to me that the reason, because I was like, why have they done this? I wasn't upset, but I thought, why have they done this? And it was made very clear to me that the people who support Trump will support him anyway. It's a division thing. The people who are supporting Biden, or in fact, they're not actually supporting Biden, they're just voting against Trump. They've got no idea about Biden. But so what's going on here is he's having to expose what evil actually is. Forget the name Biden, what evil is. So that people understand what evil is. So that, because you can't appreciate good unless you understand evil. You can't, and this is why I get really annoyed with countries deleting history. You'll never know your destination unless you know where you've come from. And you know, so often in history we've deleted history. England, especially, you know, the amount of damage we've done around the world in the last 1,000 years is undescribable. We seem to bury it away like it never happened. So it's all part of exposing what is evil, so that we can move forward and see what is good. The trouble is the political arena tries to make everything identity politics. So we don't like him because he's got floppy blonde hair. We don't like him because of this. We like the Biden image. We like that sort of look. And it's all done that way rather than, I said to somebody the other day about Donald Trump, just name me one policy that you don't like, just one. I don't need two, just one. And they couldn't give me one thing. I said, this guy hasn't gone to war against anybody in 4 years. First president in 35 years to do that. Not gone to war. Whereas Obama killed 1 million people and everyone loved him. Trump hasn't done that and you hate him. And then I said, he's brokering peace deals in the Middle East. Nobody's even talking about it. An amazing feat, and they'll continue. And then he's taking on the paedophile gangs head on, which nobody's ever done, because you can't get involved in them because there's royal families involved and the mainstream media's involved and there's top officials in government involved. You can't take them on. It's too dangerous. You know, it infiltrates our own world. But he's doing that. He's taking on the paedophile gangs. He's taking on the child trafficking gangs. I'm a father of 4, a grandfather of 4. I love children. I absolutely adore children. Anybody hurts my children, I'd die for them. Or my grandchildren. I'd die.
Same way.
Yeah. So when a man stands up for children, and when I find out the amount of children that go missing, I got fact-checked on Facebook for publishing that 300 children go missing in the United Kingdom every single day. And we're worried about Madeleine McCann that went missing about 40 years ago. That's 300 a day. And I got fact-checked by Reuters and by Forbes. They said it wasn't 300, it was 150. I've gone, even if it's 150, I'll go with 150. It's a problem.
Yeah. I think what really, sorry.
Yeah, no, carry on, please.
I think what would really sway it for people when it comes to Trump is if they could see him making some high-profile arrests. So if he were able to assemble enough evidence to arrest and send to military trial Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, Bill Gates, these kind of names, that would make people sit up and listen. That would be a real game changer. But the problem that people have had is that up to now, there's been a lot of speculation. There's been a lot of talk in the background. He's going to do this. He's going to do that. But it remains speculation and opinion. There's no documentation to show that this is going to happen. There's no other kind of verifiable evidence that people can point to. And we've had to be very, very patient this year. This year has felt like about 5 years to me. I can't believe this COVID thing came in March.
I know.
And it's only months. It just drags on and on and on. And we've been very, very patient. A lot of us have been told, don't worry, good things are coming. It's going to happen. And like I said, so many people had their hopes pinned on this election and that being the point where things were going to start to change. And now we've got the uncertainty of not knowing how long this is all going to go on. So I've made the observation on a few of my shows that if we get to March or April next year and COVID is still with us, everyone's walking around in masks, businesses are still shut down, Bill Gates is still popping up on TV with his pink sweater saying, we've all got to wear masks and socially distance to protect us from this virus. And, Boris Johnson is popping up. Sorry, folks, another lockdown. Yes, we've all got to stop the spread of this virus. And Hillary Clinton's still running around and Joe Biden's still running around. I'm going to be concluding that this whole thing has been a PSYOP scam. And it's not surprising that many people are calling it out as such at this stage, because there's so much deception, there's so much duplicity, there's so much misinformation, disinformation. Anyone seeking the truth and doing a deep dive into all these rabbit holes is going to come up against so much of that. You know, we all know there are shills out there posing as truthers, posing as YouTubers or whatever, and their job is to sow misinformation, disinformation, and it becomes an absolute quagmire trying to navigate it all and trying to work out who's telling the truth, who's genuine, who's not to be trusted. It's an absolute nightmare. And I've been doing this full time for the last 8 months since I lost my day job. And it really is a minefield. And you would think the more you look into this whole subject area, the more crystal clear everything would become. But I find it's the opposite. The more time you spend looking into it, the more murky and the more chaotic it all becomes. And that's why, as I said to you earlier, I'm flip-flopping between these different mind states all the time. And I understand why other people are as well, because it's just going on and on and on. We need some clarity. We need some results. We need some verifiable things that we can point to here.
Yeah, I think I hear exactly what you're saying, but I think that what's given me the most comfort has been the spiritual side, just connecting and having. Maybe I'm just lucky that all 6 or 7 people that I talk to on the spiritual side all come back with exactly the same information, which just to me makes, and they're not, they're not all from England. They're from America. They're from Australia.
Well, I'm finding that too. I'm finding that from spiritual types that I'm listening to. They are all corroborating each other's stories.
I did, however, come up against a couple of spiritual types that, it's like music. You get that feeling that they're not on the same page, and I've left them alone because they weren't at the same. Their agenda was not the same, and it was just something that I felt. And I would have, had I have stayed with them, I would have probably been flip-flopping. But I've managed to cut them loose. My wife and I made a conscious decision, I don't know, 7 years ago, I think it was, to cut everybody out of our lives that made us feel less about ourselves than we did, and surround ourselves by positive people. And it's had such a constructive impact on our lives as a couple. And I've done very much the same on this journey, whereby I'm quite willing to interview anybody at all. And I've interviewed people that I've known in English would be what we call wrong uns. But I've done it so that the people can make their own judgment. And I want people to have a clear judgment on things and be able to trust their intuition, because we've been programmed so much by mainstream media. I've turned my television off in February this year and not looked at it at all. I'm going to look at it today because the Masters is on at Augusta. That's my love. I love my golf and that sort of thing. But I have to turn it off. I have to turn it off at the commercial breaks because it comes in with all this bullshit, and it's just like, no.
Well, it makes me feel ill when these ads come on.
I know.
It literally makes me feel unwell. I get this feeling in my stomach and I start to panic and I have to turn it off. And I get that with certain music as well. I've mentioned this in previous interviews. Yeah. Certain so-called hip-hop records now, rap records and pop records, when they come on the radio, because of what's going into the sound frequencies and what's being stripped into the recording, it makes me feel physically unwell and I have to reach for the off button. So, yeah, that's definitely happening. But I don't know how anyone is getting through the events of this year if they don't have some kind of spiritual faith.
Yeah.
Whether they're adhering to one of the organized religions, whether they identify as a Christian or a Muslim, whatever it is, or whether there's someone that just recognizes that there is a higher power, there is a creator. I don't know how you're going to be making it through these dark times if you don't have that hope, if you have that atheistic, nihilistic viewpoint. I used to be an atheist. I spent about 15 years of my life swearing that there's no God, there's no higher meaning to our lives, we're just random accidents of creation. And I don't know how I got through those years, but I did. I've known better than that for about 10 years now. So when I first kind of woke up to truth, I came to realize that, of course, there's a higher power. And of course, we are aspects of creation, individuated units of it. And that's been getting me through, even though I have these dark days and I do struggle sometimes. One thing I've noticed this year is I moved to my current location in June this year. And I'm in a very rural area now, surrounded by fields, surrounded by country lanes, surrounded by nature. And during the summer, I was going for walks every single evening, long walks till 10 o'clock at night when it got dark in June. And I was absolutely dumbfounded by the beauty of nature and just really feeling that connection to everything. It's been that way for me this year. We had the most incredible spring in the UK this year. It was warm from March pretty much all the way through to the summer. April, we were getting temperatures that normally you would get in July. I was going for walks every evening. It was beautiful. I was hearing the birds singing. I was just noticing nature so much more than I ever have before. And many other people have said the same thing to me. There's been very few chemtrails here in the UK, which is quite something. And it almost feels as if creation and nature has been trying to communicate with us this year. and reminding us of our inherent connection to it. So even with all this dark and devastating, fearful stuff, all the mind control, all the trauma, all the programming, all the lies and deceptions of this COVID narrative, still we can get that connection back to nature and our true selves and our true connection back to everything. That's been very evident to me this year, and it feels like there's some kind of communication going on there to remind us that of course there's more than just what's playing out in our everyday 3D reality lives.
Mm-hmm. No, I totally get that. I totally understand it, and I totally agree with it. And I just think that when you move from a 3D world into a 5D world, I've likened it to being in a forest, in a woodland. You're in a three-dimensional, you know the sky's up there, but you can't see it. When you back out of a forest, you can see the forest and you can see the sky. And that's when you can trust your intuition so that you can see things clearly. You move from the third dimension to the fifth dimension. Once you've got to the fifth dimension, it's almost like a drone. Once you get clarity, you can start rising through the different dimensions. So you can not only see your little woodland, you can see this woodland, and you can see everything so much clearer. And you can see the sky with clarity. And once you start going through the different dimensions of clarity and spirituality, you can feel yourself. It's uplifting. I use the drone because it's an uplifting feeling that you can see with complete clarity. Through this journey, I've known certain pinpoint facts, but what has happened is I've needed the spiritual connection to put them together to get clarity. And when you do that, I've been incredibly peaceful. And I try and get that message out to people. I say it so many times, I'm not the Messiah, I am just Charlie. But what I'm doing is taking the pieces, and every single person is a piece of that puzzle. And when you put them together, you get clarity. Sometimes you get a piece that goes in upside down, and you need a bit of help from your grandmother or whatever to turn it over to put it in the right way up. But these are lessons in life.
Yeah. So have you always had that perspective on things, or is that something that's come to you in more recent years? So when you were flying around on private jets with strippers and cocaine and stuff, were you of that spiritual persuasion, or is that something that has evolved more recently?
I was born into a religious cult called Plymouth Brethren, and I had an arranged marriage at 18. I came out at the age of 23, and I was a lost soul for many years. A deeply lost soul who had no direction, no idea of what was going on. But I'd learned that I was brainwashed, although the English system doesn't say I was brainwashed. They use the word I was indoctrinated. That fits to the narrative. It's only Muslims that are brainwashed. Christians are indoctrinated. Same thing, different word. So then I had to find myself, and it took me 10 years to find myself, and to find out what was true. Then I went through a period of immense partying, where I was out every single night of the week, enjoying life and just probably drowning a lot of my feelings.
That was me through the whole of the 90s.
Yeah. And they were good years. I don't regret them at all.
Happy for the experience. Yeah.
Exactly. And I wouldn't be here today without that experience of the highs at night and then waking up with a mouth that tasted awful and a head that was banging like a drum. And I don't regret a thing of that, and it was a great learning curve. But for the last 10 years, I've enjoyed a happiness that I never thought I would find. And when I started to dig inside in February, because I was hearing information that I needed to clarify. I was unaware of the two different sides that we were facing right now. But the more I spoke to the spiritual side, and the first person I spoke to on the spiritual side was an Indian lady called Didi Panasar. And she just brought me so much clarity to what I'd heard. And that was the first step that I realized. And then I had a number of different, JCK was one, Laurie Ladd, and there's quite a long list of them that I love talking to that have been tremendously constructive in bringing pieces together. So it was the start of this year that I really started looking inside myself. And I don't know if you probably didn't notice this, but in March, when I started doing my walks along the seafront, 10K walks every day and up a hill, I did my videos on my phone. And I used to finish them off with, Jesus loves you, but everyone else thinks you're a CUNT. That's where it started, and it became a catchphrase. And then I realized
somebody said twat lately, haven't you?
Sorry?
You've amended that to twat lately.
I amended it to twat. Now I've just go, Jesus loves you, and everybody knows what is going to be said. But that sort of opened the Jesus door that had been closed for the last few years, and put that sort of on the back burner, if you like. It was there, but I hadn't been looking at it. And then my connection with God came back in, and it's got nothing to do with religion. I want to make that clear. It's all to do with spirituality. Religion I see as very divisive, and you and I know better than most. We grew up with Protestants fighting Catholics in Northern Ireland, where you believe in the same God, you read the same Bible, but I've got to kill you because your view is different to mine. You just go, right. Really? So that was the start. Sorry, Mark.
So you don't identify as a Christian then?
I do identify as a Christian because that's where I came from. My teaching was Christian teaching. But there are many different strands. You know, the group that I was in was called Plymouth Brethren, and they regarded themselves as the elite. As my father used to say, many are called but few are chosen, and we're the chosen ones. And there was this like elitist view. So there are many different. I use the term Christian. I believe in God. I believe in Christ. I believe in, and I'm going to mention one thing here, which was very constructive to me. When I work in the Middle East, I went to one of the palaces, and I went to for iftar, the breaking of the fast, to a majlis, which is basically a big square room where they all sit down and they pray together, and then they eat afterwards. But in that room, there was Muslims, Christians, Sunnis, Shias, black, white, every single culture. The only thing that wasn't in there was women, but it was all men. But everybody got on, and I saw this Sunni and Shia cleric sat together talking like friends. And I was like, really? I thought you were supposed to hate each other. But they didn't. Then you realize it's all political. The real people actually got on really, really well. So, yes, I was born and brought up a Christian. I still have Christian values, but I don't get into the sectarian side of religion. I believe in spirituality and faith.
Yeah. I went to a Christian church for 4 years back in the 90s, but it really didn't work for me. And that actually drove me down the path of atheism because of all the confusion that it created in my mind, and the hypocrisy that I saw set me off on the path of atheism for 15 odd years. And then I got to where I am now, and thankfully I rediscovered that connection back to the Creator, and I realized that there's a spiritual aspect to everything. One of the most interesting things that these spiritual mediums are talking about now is that each of us alive in the world today, and particularly those of us playing a part like you and I are, and the many other people speaking out about what's going on, going public with it, made the decision to come here and be a part of things on a soul level before we got here. And so we were born into our lives, and our memories were wiped clean. So we've gone through everything up to this point, not remembering what we agreed to, but actually we consented to being a part of this, and we wanted to participate in these times and play a role in it. That's a very sobering thing when somebody reminds you of that. So we've come here with this obligation to our higher selves and to creation to speak the truth and to do whatever we can to help others and reach out to others and usher them through these difficult times and everything that's yet to come. And that really resonates with me, and it makes a whole lot of sense. We're here because we chose to be here. There's nothing random about it. You're not here under coercion or by force. We chose this.
No, I totally agree. I totally agree. And I wasn't planning this journey at all. It's just that it happened the way it did for a reason. And we guess the same with yourself. You didn't sit down last year and say, next year, I'm not going to be traveling an awful lot, so I better be doing something else. I certainly didn't think that way. My wife said to me yesterday, she said, you know what? I really love what you're doing. I respect what you're doing, and I'm proud of you. But she said, what I love most of all is every day you're here. And it's just having me at the house against being traveling all over the world. And I'll be honest with you, for me, it's exciting. For her, it's dangerous when I'm flying in and out of Africa with loads of money on board, etc., and gold, etc. It's incredibly dangerous. But for me, that's the exciting bit. That's the adrenaline. And for her at home, she's very, very nervous of me doing that sort of thing. And she was saying to me only yesterday, the good thing is, with now you're doing this, you won't need to be doing that in the future. And I was like, well, this won't go on forever.
It won't.
It won't. But I think also you and I will have a duty of care to be the shoulder to lean on for the next.
Yeah.
It took me 2.5 years, Mark, coming out of the Plymouth Brethren just to find my feet. And it took me another 7.5 years to understand what truth was. And that involved a trip to Israel and Palestine. And that taught me a lot, because I'd learned all about Jesus. I'd learned all these stories, but I wanted to go and find out. So I flew to Cyprus, had a little party in Ayia Napa, and took one of the overnight ferries from there across there, a blanket trip, I think they called it. But it was as well to have a look at the history. And I found it amazing, because when I got to Bethlehem and got to Jerusalem and places like that, they were built 300 years after Jesus died. And then I thought about 300 years, that's 12 generations. And I struggled to believe my granddad, which was only 2 generations, because it was hand-me-down stories. And I was thinking, cool, over 12 generations, that story could have been really, this is where faith comes in. And everywhere I went in Jerusalem and Bethlehem, Jesus was here, Jesus was here, Jesus was here. And I was like, wow, can you imagine if Jesus was born in Liverpool? That would have been licensed, he'd have been everywhere. That's just English humor.
Jesus is a Scouser, yeah.
Exactly.
I've been to Israel as well. I did a Holy Land trip when during the years when I believed I was a Christian. I was baptized in the River Jordan back in 1993. It made sense to me then. So, I've traveled a fair bit as well. Looking forward to reading your book. It's going to be some crazy stories in there. Now, what was I going to say? I was going to make some really potent point there, and I've forgotten what it was. I just wanted to observe that what you were saying there about you might not get to travel so much when all this is over. And it is to an end. The way we're living this year, it's unsustainable. They're not going to be able to drag this out for too much longer, particularly if this awakening of human consciousness comes in and we realize that we need to find better ways of living and unplug from this toxic control system that we've all been so reliant upon. They're not going to keep everyone locked down. They're not going to prevent people from flying. The vaccination agenda is not going to succeed. The chipping and the health passports, it's not going to succeed. None of this stuff is going to come in. They're terrifying us with it. They're hanging it over our heads as threats, but we're not going to let it happen. Collectively, as a humanity, none of this stuff is going to succeed. These are signs of a desperate control system panicking because it knows its days are numbered. So we are going to be able to move freely about the land and travel internationally again. I just cannot accept that all that is going away, and I cannot accept that it's going to be dependent upon you having had a vaccine. So we're going to be able to get out there and do our thing again. But whereas a few years ago, I traveled internationally to do DJ gigs, and that was my reality. And it's something I greatly enjoyed doing. In more recent years, I've fine-tuned my activities to the point that I do virtually no DJ gigs now. And there aren't even any bloody clubs open now to go and DJ if you wanted to. So for the past few years, I've been traveling a lot, and I've been going to conferences and meetup groups and giving talks and presentations on the sort of things I now get into in my books and the sort of things we're discussing here. So that may well be the reality for the likes of us in the years to come. We're going to be in demand to go to conferences around the world and speak our knowledge, speak our truth. It's going to be very different to what we did before for a living, but we're still going to be appreciated and respected in this new realm of our activities. I think we're going to see more of that in the coming years.
What I think would be nice is when we get the opportunity to meet up together and share truth between two people who understand the truth.
Well, the first thing we need to do is have a bloody big party when we've put COVID to bed, and when it's been exposed as the monumental scam that it is. We all need to have a massive blowout, a massive party, a huge bender, get it all out of our system. And then when we've done that, we can knuckle down to what needs to come next. But doesn't everyone need a party right now?
Oh,
don't we all need a bit of fun, a bit of enjoyment?
Totally. I'm going to pick up on one point you made there about the vaccine. I can let you into a little secret. I was not allowed to talk about the ballot papers being watermarked because I was under an NDA about that. And of course, the minute it came out, I wanted to tell everyone. There's another trap that's been set for the vaccines. Because all the big pharma, including Pfizer, they're nearly there now with the vaccines. Very, very nearly there. Interesting that the chairman of Pfizer has sold 62% of his shares before it's been released. Very interesting that. He must know something. But also, Donald Trump knows that not one of these companies has followed the correct procedure of testing that is in the Constitution for them to be released. So they've all spent
not just in America, this is internationally, right?
This is worldwide. Not one of them has followed the correct procedure on testing. And he has hard evidence of that. But he's going to let them expose themselves yet again. And every time he sets a trap, they jump in with both feet. And this is what I'm putting out there so that when it happens, people know that they heard it from me, that I've told you he set a trap for the vaccine. And you wait and see when it comes right. He's going to bring them right to the door, like he did with Biden. He took him right to the door. He took him a lot closer to the door than I wanted him to before he exposed them. But he'll expose the vaccines as well. They have not been tested properly. The tests that they did on the vaccines originally in India killed 35,000 children with the vaccine. That was from Bill Gates. It killed an awful lot more in Africa when tested. And something that the media have chosen to completely blank out, that 100 students from a certain university in the UK were tested with a vaccine, and every single one of them died. 100 students.
BBC Evening News forgot to mention that one.
They forgot to mention it in the UK. And I would have thought that was fairly big news. Mind you, it was only 100 students, and they were probably all left-wing, so it didn't matter, really.
Yeah. And you can tell a lot from the dates on which all this stuff is getting done. I've made a point in my videos recently of letting people know that we're all unwitting participants in a mass satanic ritual. Yeah. And these evildoers observe dates, they observe numbers. Mm-hmm. So it was just this week on Monday, the 9th of November, which is 9/11.
Yeah.
A God number, a master number in Masonry, you know, very significant numbers in the dark occult, where Boris Johnson pops up with his announcement that, good news, folks, there's a vaccine on the way, and it's the first piece of good news this year. So isn't it marvelous? We'll all be able to get vaccinated and get back to normal. No accident he delivered that on 9/11. Correct. And the latest lockdown in the UK that we're undergoing at the moment was announced on Halloween, which was a Saturday after dark. So why would he wait until Saturday to do an announcement? And if he did, why would he wait till after dark? Because it's spell casting.
Yeah.
It's a cult ritual.
Mm-hmm.
So Halloween, we get announced that we're going into another lockdown, and it comes in the following Thursday. So it's so urgent and it's so important that it can wait till Thursday, because Thursday was bonfire night, 5th of November, a date loaded with symbolism when it comes to the overthrow of tyranny. So these people, if they are people, are directly mocking us to our faces in line with satanic ritual. They're rubbing our noses in it, and they're having a good old laugh at the fact that the vast majority of the population are walking around in masks, which is a part of satanic ritual initiation. They wear masks in black masses. So they've got all us doing that now. Well, those of us that do it. They've got us standing 6 feet apart, which is another tenet of black masses and satanic ritual. They've got us washing our hands every 5 minutes, and all these ritualistic behaviors that people are undergoing because they think it's to keep us safe from the virus. What they don't realize is that their satanic overlords are mocking them and getting them to participate in all this stuff. And I truly hope that all this will come to light and become public knowledge in due course, so that people can discover the extent to which these absolute demons have been robbing us of our natural born rights and freedoms and looking down on us, disempowering us. It gets me so mad when I think about this. I have to breathe deeply and calm down. But we need all this stuff to become public knowledge. All of this in due course has to become exposed for all to see and for all to understand.
Well, I tell you what, I can understand why all of my followers wanted you on my show, because that was one of the most constructive conversations I've had. For the people that are sort of, as you say, flip-flopping, I thought there was so much in that was absolutely beneficial. And I think it would be really, really good that we do this again, because I think we've got so much to cover. I think the power of music is something we need to cover. And also, we've touched on the subliminal side of music. I remember growing up and learning about, in the cinema, they used to put one bottle of Coke in the 16 or 32 frames a second on one frame that you couldn't actually see, but it came into your subliminal, so that when the interval came, you went straight for a Coke. And that was my introduction to the subliminal world.
That's right. They've been doing that forever. They understand the human psyche. They understand the subconscious mind. They've been doing it through music, through Hollywood movies, even TV news broadcasts. When the BBC Evening News comes on, I mean, I've learned to spot it. You get this spiral that comes on when the BBC logo comes on screen, and it's a 6, and it's part of the 666, which is an important number in Satanism.
Yep.
So they're doing it all the time, 24 hours a day. But yeah, it has been a very constructive conversation, Charlie. And I've got to shout out my mum and dad, because they love your videos. They watch your stuff all the time. My parents, they don't watch TV. They just stay on YouTube all day. And I know they'll see this one because they see all your stuff. So I think there was great benefit in doing this.
Well, I'm going to send much love to your mum and dad, and many, many thanks. And you should be very proud of your son standing up for what's true.
Just doing what I came here to do, man. Took me long enough to realize.
Exactly. Thank you very much, Mark. An absolute pleasure and a privilege.
Thank you.
Hello everyone. Charlie Ward has finally got a new website. It's called drcharlieward.com. All of his videos, new and old, will be added there for you to watch for free. Add your email address to subscribe to Charlie's newsletter for regular updates and to stay in touch. Alright, Spanish version. Hola a todos. Charlie Ward tiene por fin una nueva página web, www.drcharliewards.com. Allí encontrarás todos sus vídeos, nuevos y viejos, para que los puedas ver gratis. Apunta tu email y suscríbete a la newsletter de Charlie para recibir actualizaciones regulares.